Salutations, respected viewers. In this video, I'm going to ask what's happening next for Brexit and Theresa May. Well, this Brexit proposal that's before Parliament now, no, I have not perused the 585 pages. I suppose I could find it online if I wanted to, and I'm sure it'd be written in quite abstruse legalese beyond my humble ability to comprehend such things. On the face of it, I think the United Kingdom ought to agree to this. We're often told by Remainers that leaving the EU would be a catastrophe, yet none of them, so far as I know, seem to think this would be catastrophic, and therefore go for it. They've got little excuse not to vote for it. I've been speaking to someone in the financial sector, someone I trust, to tell me it would be immensely difficult if the United Kingdom left the EU without an agreement. This deal would hugely reduce any chance of the Northern Ireland conflict having a recrudescence. The Irish government welcomes it, and so on. It doesn't mean there's going to be free travel anymore. Well, there will be between the Republic of Ireland and the UK, but between other EU member states. Sorry, not freedom of movement, freedom of actually settle. But it would sort out the rights of EU citizens already resident in the United Kingdom, British citizens resident in other EU member states, and so on. My reservation about it is there's this backstop arrangement for Northern Ireland, which would pertain, supposing the UK and the European Union were unable to thrash out a long-term alternative. Considering just how tortuously Byzantine these negotiations were to get this far, the likelihood of the UK and the European Union being able to arrive at agreement about another long-term solution seems to be low. Anyway, so Brexit. Well, what would it mean leaving without an agreement? We're not quite sure. Would it in some ways be status quo ante? So a hard Brexit, is that sang-froid or stupidity? We're often told it's foolhardy. Sometimes I wonder if it's Project Fear all over again. It would also be bad for the European Union because it would blow a massive black hole in their budget. And these current arrangements that are before the House of Commons, the UK would be paying in something like 39 billion euros. I'm not quite sure for how long. This arrangement has met with caustic criticism from hardline Brexiteers. Now, May's heart is not in Brexit, everybody knows that. So it's crunch time. I thought there are only about 250 loyal Conservative members of Parliament who'll vote for this. Sir Graham Brady is chair of the 1922 committee. He has to receive 49 letters to trigger a leadership election. He hasn't reached that level. He said he hasn't even told his wife how many he's received thus far. Anyway, so I just want to hurry up, do Brexit and make it irreversible. Even though, yes, there are problems with this, there are things I dislike with it. In principle, I wouldn't want to pay a brass farthing to the EU, things like that. Another good thing is, so as I was saying, it's the United Kingdom is going to be able to control immigration, have less control over trade. That is a downside. But there's not going to be a perfect Brexit, just like there wouldn't be a perfect solution to staying in the European Union. Now, who's against it? Boris Johnson does, but it's just naked ambition with him. He wants the top spot. He was denied it in 2016 when he was knifed by Michael Gove. Boris Johnson could still have gone for the Prime Ministership, but he bottled it. The Honourable Jacob Rees-Mogg has, of course, excoriated this deal, but he would inveigh against anything. No deal would satisfy him. So I don't think we need to take his prognostications for the UK's long-term vassalage very seriously. So any Brexit agreement will be anathematized by foam-flecked Euro fanatics. The Remainers, the ultra-Remainers, it will be unacceptable. Because they want to stay in the European Union and they're hell-bent on thwarting the will of the people. So Labour, if they were in government, could they do any better? I think the realists amongst them realise they couldn't. Now, they're tempted to maximise their chance to cause discomfort amongst the Tory party, to set the Tories at each other's throats. I suppose they've been quite enjoying the spectacle, to get to a vote of no confidence. If this bill is voted down, there might be a vote of no confidence, May might fall, might cause another election, a snap election. Would Labour do well? Well, they might win this one, but it's a bit of a poison chalice. But nevertheless, a party should always want to be in government. rather than opposition. I know opposition is service, but government is better service, a chance to influence one's policies. There could be a final attempt to renegotiate this with the EU, and some of the Brexiteers who are narrowly rejecting this proposal say, well, let's go back to the EU and tweak it here and there. But the EU said, no, this is their final offer. They might be bluffing. I suspect they're not. I mean, what I've read is the tea leaves say, well, the EU are absolutely sick of this issue and they want to move on. It's been labyrinthine in its complexity. Now, EU negotiations often go down to the wire. They often set deadlines and then go beyond them. But I suspect in this case it's true. And what if they are bluffing? So what if they're not bluffing? Well, then the UK's got a bit of a headache. And this is it. It's take it or leave it. As I say, it would cause problems for the EU, so they want this to happen. The Remainers, the extremist Remainers, would like to scupper this and have a second referendum. And I'm talking about extremist Remainers in the Conservative Party as well as in Labour, and the Liberal Democrats are mostly an extreme Remain party. The second referendum, there might be the same result as before. Now, it shows Remain slightly ahead, but that was the same case, 2.5 years ago. So this might happen again. Who would want to be Prime Minister right now? That might save May. Well, actually, I think a few people would. So she has reneged on her pledges to the DUP. Well, that's politics, I'm afraid. Northern Ireland's only got 3% of the population. The majority of people there voted for Remain. So if you're those who voted for Leave in Northern Ireland, you're about 1% of the UK population. I'm afraid that, the tail mustn't wag the dog. So although Northern Ireland will be very aligned with the Republic of Ireland, they're just going to have to live with it. All right, if they want the porous border, that's the only way to achieve it, I'm afraid. And I know Nicola Sturgeon saying, well, what about Scotland? Well, tough. You've chosen to be part of the UK. The UK government can make an arrangement for the whole of the United Kingdom. It can make an exemption, and it has, because there's a Good Friday Agreement. That's an international treaty which mentions the EU. Blah blah blah. Northern Ireland is a special case. The logic of devolution is we do have different policies in different parts of the United Kingdom. Doesn't it? We don't impose uniformity. So no one is impressed with this deal. I think Theresa May herself can't be elated with it. After all, she wanted to stay in the European Union. But if she shows mettle in this, well, it might redound to her credit. Got to say, I've got to hand it to her for persistence, for indefatigability, this dogged determination to get this done. A crisis handled well will strengthen her. Though I can't say that she's pulled this off beautifully, but, she's been very hemmed in by her narrow majority and by the fact that the headbangers on both sides wouldn't give her much leeway. It was impossible to satisfy them both, and this deal, kind of somewhere in the middle, hasn't satisfied either side. So the 19th of March deadline is looming. Booting her out, will that happen? I don't think it'll happen before then, actually. But it wouldn't improve things, as she quite correctly said, which is obviously not a clarion call to arms from a Prime Minister who's very charismatic. She's charmless, some people think, unshowy, bland. There we are. She's going to be like a manager of the shop, a functionary, just gets things done. Put it this way, she used to work in the back office of the Bank of England. She's that sort of personality. Bland, greyish, a sort of female John Major, if you will. But who are the big beasts who'll be lining up for her job? And if I were her, I might be sick of it by March. I think Sajid Javid, he's the one I think will be the next leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. Not necessarily Prime Minister, by the way, because if there's an early election or something. Philip Hammond, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, he's quite a likely bet. Been in the Parliament for 21 years, just like Theresa May, former Univ boy. He went to a state school, quite credible, self-made millionaire. I think no one dislikes him. He's bland. That seems to be fashionable these days. Bojo, of course, his life will be meaningless if he doesn't achieve his ultimate ambition. I don't think he will. His stock has fallen. People are seeing him for the fraud that he is. He's all in this for himself and all the rest of it. He's no longer so popular. Now, he's very alluring as a personality because he's more laughs than a barrel of monkeys. But is he suitable as Prime Minister? Probably not. And, of course, he's guilty of such chicanery. Anyway, who else is there? Michael Gove, who comes across as a creep, a bit slimy. So, no, I don't think he'll make it either. Dr. Fox, I have quite a lot of time for him. Now he's in the cabinet. He's a Brexiteer, and he's staying on board, as is Gove, which is perhaps surprising. Both Scotsmen, and obviously it's quite unpopular at Brexit in Scotland, but they represent English seats. Then there's David Davis, who said he will not stand. Otherwise, he'd be quite a credible contender. I've never warmed to him. I've always seen him as really dull, and I suppose that matters to me. And never forget the way he knifed the Monday Club, just for PR reasons. So remember the other people who threw their hat in the ring 2.5 years ago. Andrea Leadsom, well, she's just got very little credibility. She was an unknown until that time. Stephen Crabb, likewise, too inexperienced, doesn't have the big name. Amber Rudd, people talk about, though she's seemed to have stuffed up Brexit, and she holds her seat by a wafer-thin majority. Lib Dems could get around next time. I don't think any of those will get it, or indeed stand for it. So that's it. I think Theresa May's got less than 6 months left in the job. She may be fed up of it, or the people might say, well, let's just get rid of her right after Brexit. Then it's no longer querying the pitch for Brexit. The trouble is, I don't think this bill will be passed. I can't see how it's going to be passed, because it would require a lot of Labour Brexiteers to defect. I just don't think it's going to happen. The SNP are obviously going to vote against. So what then? Probably a final effort at negotiation. There might be some trifling concession from Brussels. Would that get passed? Just possibly. No confidence vote. So obviously Theresa May could be out in a fortnight. But there's got to be some sort of way out of this impasse.